Orlando is the most visited place in the US. So it stands to reason that there are an abundance of short-term rentals and there's an opportunity there. So let's just drill down on what we see to be some of the top 5 costly mistakes that short-term rental investors make. And I want to help you from making those. I'm Cindy Velez. I'm a local realtor here in the Orlando area. I'd love to hear from you. Give me a call, shoot me an email, text, so we can chat. Well, the number one mistake I see folks doing is buying in the wrong area. They think that buying close to Disney is the number one consideration, when they also need to consider, you're buying close to Disney, what is the current supply of short-term rentals? What's your competition look like? If you're buying an existing property, how are the reviews on the property? You know, those 5-star reviews are really what get these properties the attention online, and it's difficult to overcome reviews that are already existing on a property. And Orlando's big, let's face it, it's pretty spread out. So people are driven for short-term rentals by different reasons. Maybe they're visiting family and they're not going to the Disney area. Maybe they're here for healthcare and they need some time in a short-term rental because they have some treatment. So what's super important, really, I mean, some of the number one things you're thinking about when you're buying in a given area and you're going to rent the property as a short-term rental, just make sure it's zoning compatible. So how do you know if it's zoning compatible, meaning that it's zoned and short-term rentals are allowed? It can get really complicated. So you may have an area of town that may be zoned for short-term rental by the county, but there may be a homeowners association that doesn't permit the short-term rentals, or the short-term rentals are a minimum of 30-day or a 60-day rental. So it can be confusing, it can be complicated, but this is where I can guide you. And don't be fooled, just because you see an Airbnb in the area does not mean it's a short-term rental approved area. The second costly mistake that I see folks making when they're investing in a short-term rental is underestimating the cost of the investment. And underestimating the cost of the investment isn't just if you're financing what your monthly carry is on your mortgage with your taxes and insurance, but it's everything else too. It's your homeowner's insurance, right? It's the proper type of insurance. If you're renting on a property, you have liability insurance. You also need to consider, do you need any licensing from the local government or the local county? You also need to factor in the maintenance. If you have a short-term rental that's a nightly rental with check-ins potentially every 3 days or at least every 5 days, you're going to have cleaning costs, you're going to have soft good updates, you're going to need to repair and replace things, you're going to need to make sure that your linens and the bedding and everything remains fresh and feels good and feels like home to somebody and feels nice, like someplace they want to stay. So here's an example for you. I had an investor purchasing 2 short-term rental properties, and both had pools, which he felt was important in that area, which it probably was. It's a big draw. If you have people coming to Florida, they want to dip off in the pool after they've been out all day. And he didn't value the pool heater as being something that was a necessary expense for the property. He found out later that that wasn't the case, and he was losing rentals because the pools were not heated. So that was an investment of an additional $7,000 just in a pool heater alone for each one of those properties. I don't want you to make those costly mistakes. The third thing I would say, costly mistake people make is they overestimate the potential for the rental income. So if you are new to the market, the Airbnbs, you need to also understand there's a lot of competition out there. So if your property doesn't have any reviews yet, you don't have any, if you will, any references or data to rely on, it may take a little bit longer to get those rentals up, and so it may take you a little longer to be able to see some revenue coming in from the rentals. Also, just because a property performed a certain way when it was owned by a previous investor doesn't necessarily mean it's going to perform exactly the same way for you. Think about dynamic pricing. Maybe that particular investor was charging rents on a nightly basis that were way below what you're comfortable charging with what your carry on the property should be. Make sure you're doing a deep dive into all of that. And of course, if it's an active rental, we're going to obtain all of those records from the current owner and the seller to make sure that we can vet exactly what the rents look like, what the cash flow's been, what the expenses have looked like, what the updates have been, if there were any pending repairs and maintenance. Very important. If you overestimate that rental opportunity, it can be very costly. The next mistake I see is people not fully understanding property manager and why that may work for them, or maybe why that may not work for them. I often see people say, I'm going to take care of this, I'm going to Airbnb it myself, I'm going to handle all of that, but you might not love that call that you get in the middle of the night when the toilet has stopped up. If you have a management company and they have full-time maintenance, there's something that's going to be very valuable to you also, especially if you're an out-of-state owner. That can be very challenging to find vendors. So don't underestimate the fact that a management company may be one of the best investments you could make, and those fees do range from area to area and investors to investors. So if you're looking for massive tax benefits on your short-term rental, you probably know that you have to qualify with material participation in the property. And don't be alarmed, the management companies can work with you. So the next thing I really like to share with you is that it's super important to not ignore the existing competition or potentially even the upcoming competition in the community. Just because you find a property that might currently be performing well, or maybe it's a property that's brand new to the rental market and you see the opportunity there, if there are 15 other or 20 other homes that are just like your property and you don't have any rental history and any reviews, you may have difficulty, not to mention the fact then the renters have a little bit too much to choose from. So making sure that your short-term rental and your service are different. So I'd invested in a short-term rental at the beach. It was a great investment. Not only did we have great rentals on it, but it appreciated well. But we did one thing when we were advertising through Airbnb and the VRBO sites. We named our short-term rental so people could remember when they were looking and scrolling through hundreds and hundreds of opportunities, they remembered that we had the Starfish Townhouse. And don't forget your target audience. Think about who's going to be renting your property. If you're at the beach and your target audience is empty nesters just coming down for a couple of months in the winter, that's one thing. However, if you're trying to appeal to families traveling, multi-generational, with their grandparents and mom and dad and kids and cousins, don't buy too small. Make sure that you're selecting the property that's going to fit the target audience the best. And it's been statistically proven through the data that the homes that are larger are going to appeal to the families, because let's face it, nobody really wants to be the person to sleep on the pull-out couch or on the air mattress. And nobody really wants to share a bathroom with like 10 other people. And I just really want to be crystal clear with focusing on what your strategy is. Is your strategy to purchase a short-term rental that you may use as a second home and bring your family to? Is it to maximize your tax benefits? Or is it to have something that maybe down the road you love enough that you could retire in? Or are you purchasing for cash flow? All of these can be looked at in many different ways, and I'm here to help you strategize that. Shared a lot of great information with you here today. I'd love to chat with you more. Please feel free to reach out by email, cell, or text. That's why I made this video, so you don't make these costly mistakes. Everybody has a different strategy. So that's why I'd really love to just talk to you, chat with you about your strategy, what your goals are, so that we can customize the short-term rental purchase experience for you.